The war historian adjusted his neural recorder, his segmented fingers twitching slightly as he began his final entry on the Battle of Dirac 7. His voice was calm, practiced, but beneath it lay the weight of a lesson ignored. There's a rule in this universe, one that empires and warlords whisper to their subordinates, one written not in ink but in blood. Never fight the human sniper. The Galactic Empire broke it. He leaned forward, exhaling through his secondary nostrils, as if expecting someone, anyone, to challenge the truth he was about to deliver. No one did. The chamber was silent. The story was known, its consequences irreversible. The Empire had expanded its reach for centuries, stretching across systems like a slow-moving storm, swallowing civilizations whole. It consumed species that had existed for millennia, dissecting them, cataloging them, integrating them, or erasing them. Humans had been an afterthought at first, unremarkable in size, their physiology neither imposing nor particularly advanced. They were adaptable, yes, but adaptability alone did not frighten empires. Resistance was a natural part of conquest, and the Empire had seen it all. But what they had not seen, what they had failed to understand, was how humans waged war when pushed to desperation. The Empire had underestimated Earth's history, the scars of its past conflicts, the perfection of its lethal arts. And at the heart of this miscalculation lay one man. The sniper did not have a name. Or rather, if he had, no one spoke it anymore. To the Empire, he was a specter, a myth woven from fear and whispers. They called him the Ghost, the Revenant, the Long Shadow. Stories painted him as something beyond human, an entity that could kill from miles away, threading bullets through the narrowest gaps, striking so precisely that not even most advanced shielding could guarantee protection. To his enemies, he was death. To his allies, he was a promise that no matter how dire the war became, there was still something the enemy feared. The first time the Empire encountered him, they dismissed the reports as exaggeration. A lone sniper couldn't be a strategic threat. Even if he had skill, the sheer technological gap between a single soldier and the Empire's war machine was insurmountable. What was one man against orbital superiority, against legions of battle-hardened warriors equipped with precision drones, tracking satellites, and thermal scanners capable of detecting a heartbeat from orbit? But the sniper understood something the Empire did not. War was not just fought with weapons. It was fought with fear. It was fought with patience. It was fought with the certainty that the enemy would make a mistake before he did. The Empire's mistake came on Dirac 7. It was an unremarkable planet, strategically valuable only for its location, a stepping stone in the Empire's expansion. It should have fallen like so many others. The resistance had already been pushed to its last breath. Its fighters scattered, its strongholds reduced to ash. The Imperial commander, Lord Inarikash, believed the planet was already won. He had celebrated too soon. The first kill was not noticed immediately. A sentry, stationed on a ridge overlooking an Imperial encampment, crumpled to the ground without a sound. His partner glanced at him and frowned, confused by the sudden stillness, then saw the small, perfect hole in his forehead. By the time he reached for his communicator, he too was gone, a kilometer away. The sniper adjusted his position, sliding back into the terrain like a shadow, dissolving into the dusk. He did not celebrate his shots. He did not linger to watch the confusion spread. He simply moved. One kill, then another, a rhythm as precise as the beating of his own heart. The Empire's forces responded as expected. Panic at first, then orders shouted in clipped, angry bursts. Find him. Track the shots. Deploy the drones. But they were already too late. The sniper had not fired from the same position twice. By the time their scanners focused on the ridgeline, he was gone. A ghost. The deaths continued through the night. Officers fell mid-sentence, their words cut off as if the universe itself had erased them. Soldiers fired wildly into the darkness, their training unraveling in the face of an enemy they could not see. Inarikash watched his forces with growing frustration. This was not how wars were fought. Wars were fought in fleets, in battalions, in calculated clashes, where numbers dictated the victor. Not like this. Not against an unseen force that made every shadow a threat. A sniper could not destroy an army. but a sniper could break its mind. As dawn broke, the Empire scanners finally caught something. A heat signature, faint but present, movement on a distant ridge. A sniper could hide from sight, could mask his presence, but he could not completely evade detection forever. Inari Kosh gave the order himself. Artillery fire screamed across the landscape, slamming into the ridge with enough force to turn rock to molten glass. The impact sent a shockwave rippling across the battlefield. Dust and debris choked the sky. Silence followed. Then relief. It's done. We have him. The Empire's troops cheered. For the first time in hours, they felt as though control had been restored. The sniper, the myth, was nothing more than a man, and no man could survive that. Then the next shot came, from the opposite direction, and Inari Kosh realized, too late, that he had not just lost a battle, he had lost a war. The silence after the last shot stretched long and thin, like a taut wire waiting to snap. The Imperial forces had barely begun to process what had happened when another officer crumpled, a neat, bloodless hole punched through his visor. Panic rippled through the ranks. Soldiers dove for cover behind armored vehicles, some abandoning their patrols entirely. Others scanned the ridges with desperate eyes, searching for a target they had no hope of finding. Lord Inari Kosh clenched his mandibles in frustration, his four clawed fingers drumming against the steel railing of his command platform. He was watching the battle unfold through augmented lenses, each display feeding him a wealth of tactical data. None of it mattered. The numbers, the heat maps, the trajectory estimates. Useless. The sniper had fired from the opposite direction of the bombardment, meaning the man had either predicted their attack and repositioned beforehand or, more impossibly, move in the aftermath. Neither option boded well. Deploy the Zalari hunters. Inari Kosh growled, his deep voice reverberating through the command post. A nearby officer hesitated, his pale, translucent skin flushing a darker shade. My lord, if we... Inari Kosh turned his gaze on the officer, and whatever protest had been forming died in his throat. The warlord's patience was thinner than the air on this miserable rock. Now, he repeated. Within moments, the Zalari hunters moved out. They were the Empire's elite, a breed of genetically modified killers designed specifically for counter-sniper operations. Their armor absorbed thermal signatures. Their helmets were calibrated for micro-movements imperceptible to the naked eye, and their neural implants linked them to the Empire's most advanced tracking systems. They fanned out across the battlefield in disciplined silence, their weapons primed, their senses heightened to unnatural levels. If the sniper was still out there, they would find him. For a long while, nothing happened. Then the first hunter fell. His body hit the ground with an unnatural stillness, as if the life had been stripped from him before impact. No explosion, no sign of struggle. Just a single, perfect shot to the throat, right through the tiny gap between his helmet and chest plate. A second hunter dropped an instant later. Then a third. Inari Kosh felt a slow, creeping dread settle over him. The sniper was not just winning. He was dissecting them. The hunters, his best operatives, had lasted mere minutes. Pull them back, he commanded, the words bitter in his mouth. Now! The remaining hunters, trained beyond the threshold of fear, did not hesitate. They vanished into the ruins, their adaptive camouflage flickering as they retreated. Even they knew that pressing forward was suicide. The command post was deathly quiet. No one dared speak. The soldiers who once believed their superior numbers would crush the human resistance now looked to the skies as if hoping for salvation. Inari Kosh's mind raced. The sniper had to be using terrain to his advantage. Dirac 7 was a wasteland of ridges and jagged plateaus, but nothing that should provided this level of cover. The warlord pulled up the topographical data, analyzing potential sniper nests. Then he saw it. There were no nests, no high ground occupied. The sniper wasn't staying in one place at all. He was moving, constantly. Every shot came from a different position. Every kill made with ruthless efficiency before he melted back into the landscape. He was using their own fear against them. Inari Kosh let out a low growl. This was no ordinary soldier. No lone survivor with a rifle. This was someone who had spent years mastering the art of death. Someone who had turned battlefields into hunting grounds. His claws flexed, scraping against metal. The warlord had fought countless battles, crushed entire rebellions, razed cities to ground without hesitation. He had never lost. And yet, here he was losing. Enough. Inari Kosh straightened, his posture rigid, and turned to his comms officer. Orbital strike. The room tensed. The comms officer's scale fingers hesitated over his console. Sir, we still have forces. I do not care. The warlord's voice was iron. This planet is already lost. I will not be humiliated by a single human. A pause. Then the officer swallowed hard and sent command. Above Dirac 7, the Empire's warships adjusted their trajectories, aligning their weapons toward the planet's surface. A moment later, the sky ignited. Flames rained down in massive arcs, vaporizing stone and sand alike. The ridges that had provided cover were reduced to molten slag. Shock waves rolled across the battlefield, turning fortified positions to dust. The very ground trembled under the force of the assault. When the bombardment finally ceased, nothing remained of the sniper's last known position but scorched earth. The warlord exhaled slowly, allowing himself a rare moment of satisfaction. It was over. The command post remained silent. The soldiers, too, wary to voice their relief. They had seen the sniper's work. They had lost too much to celebrate too soon. And then the next shot came. One single, precise shot, not fired from the ruins of the battlefield, not from any of the obliterated ridges. It came from behind them, inside the perimeter. Inari Kosh turned sharply, his eyes wide with something dangerously close to fear. One of his officers collapsed, his body limp, the shot having entered to the base of his skull. The sniper had never been on the ridges. He had never been cornered. He had already been inside their lines the entire time. The realization struck like a hammer. The sniper wasn't on the outskirts of the battlefield, pinned down by their forces. He was here, inside their perimeter. He had been moving through them the entire time. Inari Kosh's mandibles clicked shut, his mind racing. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to issue orders, to regain control of the unraveling battle. But control was an illusion. It had never belonged to him. The sniper fired again. A second officer crumpled, his body twitching as he hit the ground. The shot had been fired at close range, precise and deliberate. Not a desperate attempt to kill, but a calculated decision to create chaos. It worked. The command post dissolved into a mess of panicked voices, soldiers shouting conflicting orders, blasters raised at every shadow. Inari Kosh's claws tightened around the railing. He had spent a lifetime conquering lesser species, bending entire worlds to his will. He had never known fear like this. Seal the compound, he barked. Full lockdown. No one in or out. The command center's automated defenses whirred to life. Blast doors groaned as they slammed shut, kinetic shields flickering to full power. The remaining guards took position, rifles raised, scanning every corridor. They were expecting an army, an ambush, a coordinated assault. But the sniper was alone, and that made him more dangerous than any battalion. A whisper of movement, a sharp, muted sound. A guard staggered, a thin blade buried between the gaps in his armor. The sniper had moved through their ranks undetected, cutting them down before they could even react. He wasn't just a marksman, he was a hunter. The soldiers opened fire, their shots ricocheting off walls and consoles, but they weren't hitting anything. The sniper didn't engage in prolonged fights. He struck, moved, and vanished before the enemy could retaliate. One by one, the guards fell. Some were shot cleanly through their visors. Others killed so swiftly they didn't even have time to cry out. Inari Kosh could feel it now, the weight of inevitability pressing down on him. This wasn't war. This was an execution. The warlord backed away, his mind scrambling for solutions. His elite hunters were gone. His forces were shattered, and his orbital strike had done nothing but destroy what little advantage he had left. The sniper had played him from the very beginning. A flicker of movement on his peripheral vision. Inari Kosh spun, raising his plasma sidearm, but it was already too late. The barrel of a rifle pressed against the side of his skull. The warlord froze. A figure stepped out of the shadows, his presence impossibly silent, impossibly controlled. The sniper was not a monster. He was not a phantom. He was just a man, flesh and bone, no taller than an Imperial officer, his armor worn and scratched from years of battle. His rifle, still warm from the last shot, was held steady, unwavering. His eyes were the only thing that mattered. Cold, calculated, not angry, not cruel, just certain. For the first time in his long, blood-soaked career, Inari Kosh understood the nature of fear. A slow breath. The sniper tilted his head slightly, as if considering something. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, not boastful, not theatrical. Just a simple, undeniable truth. You broke the rule. The warlord's mandibles twitched, his pride warring with the survival instincts, screaming at him to act, to bargain, to do anything. The sniper's finger tightened on the trigger, and Inari Kosh finally understood that there was nothing left to do. A single shot rang out. The shot echoed to the command center, a sharp, final punctuation to a battle that had never truly been a battle. It was over. Inari Kosh, warlord of the Galactic Empire, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, slumped to the ground. His lifeless eyes stared upward, unseeing, as a thin wisp of smoke curled from the sniper's rifle. Silence followed, the kind of silence that only comes after something irreversible. The remaining soldiers, scattered and broken, did not raise their weapons. They did not move. Some dropped their rifles, the will to fight bleeding from them as surely as their leader's lifeblood spread across the floor. The sniper did not linger. He was already moving. With practiced efficiency, he retrieved a small transmitter from his belt and pressed it against a console. The device hummed, hijacking the Imperial network. Across the battlefield, the remaining human resistance forces received a single transmission, a voice, calm and absolute, target neutralized. The signal alone was enough. The resistance, battered and outnumbered, had needed only a fracture in the enemy's command structure. This was more than a fracture. It was complete collapse. The Empire's forces, leaderless and afraid, faltered. Some tried to regroup, but the momentum had shifted. The resistance fighters, emboldened, struck with renewed fury. What had seemed like inevitable defeat twisted into something else. Victory, carved from the wreckage of despair. The sniper moved through the corridors, stepped silent, rifle slung across his back. He did not need to see the rest of the battle unfold. He had done his part. The Empire would fall here, not in a blaze of glory, but in confusion, in fear. As he reached an exit, he paused. The night air was cold against his exposed skin, the wind carrying the scent of scorched earth. Fires flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the broken landscape. He glanced upward. The Imperial warship still hung in the sky, motionless, uncertain. Without orders, without direction, they hesitated. They were waiting for something, for someone to tell them what to do. But there was no one left to command them, and soon there would be nothing left at all. The Resistance's final strike began as the first explosion erupted from within the main Imperial barracks. A chain reaction followed, ammunition depots igniting, fuel reserves detonating, the Empire's own war machine turning against itself. The sniper had not planted the charges. He had not needed to. The enemy had been so confident in their victory that they had left their own infrastructure vulnerable. The warships began to retreat, their commanders unwilling to risk further losses. Without ground support, without leadership, their occupation of Dirac 7 was unsustainable. The sniper exhaled slowly. It was done. He turned away from the burning horizon, his rifle a familiar weight against his back. There would be more battles, more wars to fight. The Empire was vast, and its reach would not wither overnight. But they would remember this. They would remember him. And they would remember the rule. Because the next time an Imperial commander whispered about an unremarkable planet with human resistance, the next time they prepared their legions to march, they would pause. They would hesitate. And they would wonder if, somewhere in the endless dark, the sniper was waiting. Because he always was.